The first sound wasn't laughter. It was the hollow thud of a human body meeting stubborn architecture, followed by a breathless, very American, "Are you kidding me?" At exactly 8:07 a.m. on a mild spring Tuesday, Daniel Brooks became wedged in the front doorway of the Cedar Ridge Public Library. One shoulder inside, one shoulder out, backpack twisted sideways, coffee cup crushed against his chest like evidence. The glass door stuck half open, vibrating slightly, as if embarrassed for him. For 3 long seconds, nobody moved. Then the automatic door sensor chimed. Outside, Cedar Ridge, Pennsylvania, looked innocent enough. The sky was pale blue with thin clouds drifting like they had nowhere urgent to be. The air carried the damp sweetness of early spring, wet concrete, fresh mulch, distant exhaust. It was the kind of morning that promised productivity if you believed in that sort of thing. Inside the doorway, Daniel Brooks did not believe in anything. He was 37, average height, slightly broad through the shoulders from a youth spent hauling boxes and a present spent refusing to buy new jackets. He wore a navy windbreaker zipped too tight, jeans faded at the knees, brown boots scuffed into honesty. His hair was dark, thinning just enough to make him aware of it, and his beard, short, uneven, looked like it had been trimmed by a man who had given up halfway. The backpack was the problem. It was overstuffed with resumes, a legal pad, a lunch packed at 5:30 a.m., and the quiet weight of expectations Daniel had been carrying for years. When he pushed through the doorway too confidently, the strap caught, twisted, and locked him in place like a joke told by gravity. "Sir," said a voice from inside. "Do you need assistance?" Daniel closed his eyes. If this were a movie, and the narrator would later insist it was, this was the opening image. A man stuck between outside and inside, progress halted by inches, morning optimism leaking onto the sidewalk in the form of spilled coffee. A teenager waiting for the bus across the street lifted his phone. Daniel exhaled. "Please don't," he muttered. The library door gave a soft electronic beep, trying again to open. It pushed gently against Daniel's shoulder, as if asking him to reconsider his life choices. This was supposed to be a good day. Daniel had circled it on the calendar in his small rental duplex on Maple Court. Job fair, library, be early. He had woken before sunrise, showered, ironed his shirt badly, and told himself, out loud, that things were changing. And now he was stuck in a doorway. A laugh escaped from somewhere behind him. Not mean, not kind, just human. Daniel's face burned. "Okay," he said to the door, to the town, to the universe. "Okay, I get it." He shifted his weight. The backpack wedged tighter. Spring breeze brushed his cheek. Somewhere a bird chirped, completely uninvested in his personal growth. The door sensor chimed again. And just like that, Cedar Ridge paused to watch a man learn, very publicly, that pushing harder wasn't always the answer. The laughter didn't arrive all at once. It leaked in slowly, like rain finding cracks in old pavement. First it was the woman inside the library, Margaret Lewis, 62, cardigan buttoned wrong, hair sprayed into careful obedience, who let out a surprised snort before clamping her hand over her mouth. Then the teenage boy across the street lowered his phone, unsure whether this moment was cruel or historic. Then the door itself chimed again, politely optimistic, pushing forward like it believed persistence was a virtue. Daniel Brooks stood frozen, wedged between intention and humiliation, his coffee dripping steadily onto the concrete. The smell of burnt hazelnut mixed with wet spring air. Somewhere down Maple Avenue, a delivery truck backfired, and the sound echoed like punctuation. "Sir," Margaret said again, gentler now, stepping closer. "You can, step back out." Daniel swallowed. His jaw tightened. Stepping back felt like quitting. That thought, unreasonable, reflexive, deeply American, flashed through his mind. He had spent years stepping back, from promotions that went to younger men, from interviews that ended with polite smiles, from dreams that required money he never had. Stepping back felt like admitting that forward wasn't meant for him. "I almost have it," Daniel said, though nobody had asked. He twisted his shoulders. The backpack caught harder, the zipper dug into his ribs. The door vibrated, confused. Outside, a man walking a golden retriever slowed. The dog sat obediently, tongue lolling, watching Daniel with open admiration, as if being stuck were a skill. Daniel's face flushed deeper. Margaret glanced toward the circulation desk where Luis Alvarez, 31, wire-rimmed glasses, hoodie under a blazer like he couldn't decide who he was yet, had paused mid-scan. "Luis," she called, "could you?" Luis approached carefully, like a medic at a low-stakes disaster. "Hey, man, doorways can be tricky. They get you when you're confident. Daniel barked a humorless laugh. That's my brand. Luis crouched slightly, inspecting the backpack strap. You're not stuck because you're too big, he said. You're stuck because you're carrying too much. The words landed heavier than intended. Daniel stiffened. I can manage it. I believe you, Luis said quickly. But managing and moving forward aren't always the same thing. Margaret nodded like this was something she'd learned the expensive way. The door chimed again. A small crowd had formed now, nothing dramatic, just the natural magnetism of public struggle. Mrs. Donna Feldman from the bakery across the street paused mid-crosswalk, apron dusted with flour. Kevin Moore, retired high school football coach, leaned against a lamppost, arms crossed, grinning with the wisdom of a man who'd seen worse on Friday nights. Daniel felt every eye like a measurement. He exhaled sharply. Okay, fine. He tried to reverse. The backpack wedged tighter. Someone laughed. This time, Daniel did too, short, sharp, defensive. Of course. Kevin pushed off the lamppost. Son, he called, voice booming with locker room authority. Rule number 1. If brute force worked, we'd all be geniuses. Daniel snorted despite himself. Luis adjusted the strap gently. You've got stuff packed like you're moving in. Feels like it, Daniel muttered. Margaret reached out and picked up the fallen resumes, pages fluttering in the breeze. She glanced at the headers: warehouse supervisor, forklift certified, safety compliance. You here for the job fair? She asked. Daniel nodded. Trying to be. Margaret smiled softly. Then let's get you inside without breaking you. Together, they loosened straps, slid the backpack off Daniel's shoulders inch by inch. The sensation was startling, like shrugging off a weight he hadn't realized had become part of him. When the pack finally slipped free, Daniel stumbled backward onto the sidewalk, catching himself against the brick wall. Applause broke out. Not mocking, not thunderous, just genuine, relieved, human applause. Daniel stood there, chest heaving, lighter and strangely unmoored. Luis held up the backpack. This thing's a commitment. Daniel laughed, fully this time. Yeah, it's been with me a while. Kevin nodded. Sometimes you gotta put the bag down to get through the door. The door slid open smoothly now. Daniel looked at it, then at the backpack, then at the people who had stopped their mornings for him. For the first time in a long time, stepping back didn't feel like failure. It felt like strategy. Daniel picked up the backpack, slung it over one shoulder, lighter now, intentional, and walked through the doorway. Inside, the library smelled like old books and fresh beginnings. And scene one closed not with a triumph, but with something better, a man learning that progress didn't require force, only awareness. The day Daniel Brooks stepped out of the library doorway was crisp with promise. The air carried the faint smell of wet pavement and fresh mulch, the soft tang of spring rain that had fallen overnight. Cedar Ridge seemed quiet, almost conspiratorial, like it had witnessed the doorway incident and was now curious what would come next. Daniel had learned something. Force would not always open doors. So today, as he approached the town's annual job fair at the high school gym, he carried nothing extra. His navy backpack had been pared down to essentials: resumes, a notebook, a pen, and a little confidence pocketed like a coin in his jacket. Inside the gym, banners fluttered softly in the spring breeze that filtered through open windows. The fluorescent lights bounced off polished floors, highlighting scattered folding tables and booths staffed by companies from logistics to local bakeries. People milled about, a mix of ages and professions: retirees dusting off old networks, young adults just out of college, parents who had somehow balanced work, kids, and decades of Cedar Ridge living. The smell of coffee, donuts, and faint printer ink permeated everything. Daniel approached his first table. A representative, Amanda Rivers, late 20s, sharp ponytail, warm but businesslike, smiled. Daniel Brooks. Yes, he said, offering a firm handshake, surprisingly steady now. Nice to meet you. As the conversations unfolded, Daniel realized that each approach wasn't a test of force. He listened more, asked thoughtful questions, laughed naturally at light jokes, and even recounted the doorway incident when it felt appropriate. Surprisingly, people laughed with him, not at him. And somehow, telling the story of getting stuck had become an icebreaker, a demonstration of humility and resourcefulness. Later, as he walked between tables, Daniel noticed a small crowd by the gym entrance. Mrs. Margaret Lewis and Luis Alvarez were volunteering at the welcome table. Their eyes met, a silent nod passed. It was subtle, but it reminded him he wasn't invisible. The small acts of acknowledgement, the willingness of the town to be present, were as important as any resume bullet point. Halfway through, he stopped at a booth run by a local tech startup. The owner, Charles Whitman, mid-40s, glasses slightly askew, salt and pepper hair, playful grin, gestured at the VR headset demonstration. "Ever tried something like this?" Daniel shook his head, and soon he was immersed in the simulation, maneuvering through a virtual warehouse. Mistakes were inevitable. He fell over virtual boxes, collided with imagined shelves, and laughed so hard that people nearby looked over and smiled. But each failure revealed a pattern, a rhythm, a path to improvement. After the fair, Daniel walked home slowly, reflecting. Each step reminded him that life had a way of wedging people in situations, not to punish, but to make them creative. Doors didn't open with brute force. They required observation, adaptation, and sometimes a little humor. Over the next month, Daniel applied this approach to job applications, interviews, and networking. Rejection still stung, but he treated each one as a doorway partially open, an opportunity to shift, adjust, and find a new path. He even began volunteering at the library, helping children navigate books and adults navigate technology. Humor and resourcefulness became his signature. Community members, from teenagers to retirees, began to recognize him not just as the man who got stuck in a doorway, but as someone who adapted, learned, and inspired. By early summer, Daniel had secured a position as a logistics coordinator at a regional firm. The job itself was rewarding, but the true victory lay in how he had changed. Confidence was no longer a borrowed costume but something internal, resilient, and playful. One evening, walking past the library, he saw a young man struggling to open a side door with a heavy package. Daniel smiled and stepped over. "Need a hand?" he asked, offering guidance and a creative solution that bypassed the tight hinge. The young man's expression shifted from frustration to relief. "Thanks, I was trying to force it the whole time." Daniel chuckled. Been there. He realized then that the doorway had never been the obstacle. The doorway had been the lesson. Life would wedge him in, test patience and creativity, but the exit was always available if he approached it with awareness, humor, and adaptability. And that, he decided, was worth more than any job title, salary, or public approval. The doorway had taught him that obstacles weren't ends. They were invitations to think differently, to act smarter, to laugh at the absurdity, and to keep moving. As the sun dipped behind Cedar Ridge, casting long, golden shadows over the town, Daniel Brooks walked home with light shoulders and a lighter heart. The doorway remained, still and innocuous, but now it symbolized choice, resilience, and the quiet triumph of human creativity. When life wedges you into a tight spot, don't push harder. Step back, observe, adapt creatively, and you'll find your way through. Every obstacle is a doorway to growth.
Daily happiness and motivation is hidden in. Like and subscribe.